I'm sure dads and wives around the country were alerting their family members, because it's just something that is far, far, far too close to home. It
Mm.
happened inside a home.
Let's start with this really. It's utterly horrific, the details of what happened yesterday. And the police arrested a suspect at 4 p.m. yesterday, this former soldier who's now currently being held over a triple crossbow murder. And you wonder, Matthew, it is clearly very easy to pick up a weapon like that.
Well, this is what the Home Secretary is going to have to look into. I think there has been some research being done already on the question of whether these weapons are, well, because that's what they can be used for, sadly and tragically, whether they can be bought too easily. So I'm sure Yvette Cooper will report back to us on that in the not too distant future. It seems extraordinary that someone can use that in a civilian context. It was, unbelievable story. It's the sort of story that unites the country in grief and horror and outrage. And before you know what's going on, I'm sure dads and wives around the country were alerting their family members, because it's just something that is far, far, far too close to home. It
Mm.
happened inside a home, and we know just what a massive, massive issue domestic violence is in this country, which isn't to say that's what happened in this case. And obviously we've got to be really careful in what we say, but it was a horrifying news story. And indeed it was, if it's possible to be more poignant, it was perhaps particularly extraordinary that it happened on a day where the country ended up by uniting in celebration because of the football that we've just talking about. It was the worlds of news and football colliding. And actually, Michael Owen, the former England striker, he put up on X on Twitter last night saying, and while the country celebrates, spare a thought for John Hunt. I can't remember feeling so utterly horrified in
Mm.
years. Those poor girls, truly horrific. And John Hunt, whose wife and daughters were killed, is, as you know, a BBC and I think for other outlets as well, racing commentator. Michael Owen himself loves racing. I think he trains horses. So it's just the worst possible story. And I think as a father myself, but you don't have to be a dad, you just cannot imagine what this poor man is going through, and also his surviving daughter.
Yeah, it is just beyond belief. I mean, it begs the question whether there needs to be sort of a review on the law about crossbow ownership.
I think that, as I say, I think that they're, according to the Home Office, and I may be wrong about this, but from what I was reading yesterday, I think there has been some sort of review into it that's been ongoing. And as I say, the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, I mean, only 3 or 4 or 5 days into the job, she's going to have to look at that very quickly.
Yeah, you wonder though if someone who's motivated to do something like that, whether that would actually stop behaviour like that. Very difficult to work out the root cause of why that happened. As we said, utterly horrific. Let's move on to some political news, and it's a very interesting sort of. Well, George Clooney has got involved in whether Joe Biden should remain US president. He said he should save democracy by standing aside. Do you think that will make any difference?
Well, the pressure just continues to grow. I mean, in the last 2 or 3 days, it's looked as though Biden will be the candidate, and then George Clooney, who, I mean, one smiles or laughs, but actually, in a world in which celebrity influence can be overestimated, I think he is seen to be quite a significant figure in the Democrat movement in the United States. So the fact that someone of his worldwide fame has come out and said what he said just means there's even less space in which the US president can hide. Of course, there's not much anyway, because everyone around the world saw that disastrous first debate
Yeah.
that he took part in against Trump. But it's not just Clooney. I think, is it a senator in Vermont? Is it? I think we can check that, has come out as well and said that he doesn't think he should run.
I
So
think
the
Clooney put it
pressure
quite
is mounting.
diplomatically. He said in a letter to the New York Times, the dam has broken. We can put our head in the sand and pray for a miracle, or we can speak the truth. Joe Biden is a hero. He saved democracy in 2020. We need him to do it again.
Yes, but you can see how Biden and his his entourage, his closest aides, perhaps his family. I mean, his family are said to. I don't know whether we know this, but his family are rumoured to be very strongly wanting him not to stand down. You can see how they would see this as sort of damning him with faint praise, as being coming across as faintly patronising. And it is extraordinary that we've got the most powerful human being on the world being told publicly by people who think he's been heroic in what he's done, think he's been a very good president, delighted that he took down Trump 4 years ago, but are now essentially saying you're senile and you're not fit for the job. I mean, it's a remarkable state of affairs. I hope and think that we would never get to that point in this country.
Yeah. Well, Keir Starmer had that meeting with Joe Biden yesterday. Keir Starmer speaking at the summit, I'm looking inside the Times here, he says, Ukraine can fire British missiles at Russia. This would be sort of a significant sort of step up and gear change. What do you make of this?
Well, it's fuel to the fire of those who think that we should be de-escalating our support of Ukraine. I'm not one of those, but you can find sort of hashtags, sort of vote Labour, vote World War III at the moment, and it absolutely gives the lie to anyone who thinks that Starmer and a Labour government are going to be soft on defence. And this can be seen as defence, of course, because that's how the Ukraine war the Russian invasion of Ukraine has been framed in the West from the start, that this is not just an issue for Ukrainian security, but for all of our security. But there will certainly be some concern, because none of us want an escalated conflict with Russia, but at the same time, Ukraine is a sovereign nation and it has been brutally invaded by Russia. And that was, if we'd forgotten or we hadn't been paying sufficient attention, that was rammed home once again with that appalling missile strike on a children's hospital earlier in the week. I say more widely. Politically, perhaps domestically, this NATO summit has come at a remarkable time for an incoming prime minister. It's given Starmer, in his first week in the job, the opportunity, as you've been saying earlier in the show, to meet world leaders, to sit down with the American president, to hit the ground, not just running, but sprinting, and show that he's serious about Britain's position on the world stage, serious about Britain's position in NATO.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to be checking in with our political editor in a few minutes' time. Final thing I want to ask you about, I think the political world, there'd be far fewer stories inside the papers if you couldn't have a little bit of a gossip from time to time. But the story inside the papers, some research, gossiping can harm your career. What does the study find?
Well, it finds sort of slightly mixed things. I think gossiping can be seen within a work context as making you a more sociable figure than someone who doesn't gossip, but also you can be seen as less moral and competent.
Yes.
So you might help others kind of work out who's who, what's going on, what the landscape is in the office. But at the same time, it could be a risk to you if your bosses or indeed your colleagues don't trust you.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because I wonder what kind of conversations fall under the category of gossip. I mean, it talks about when you're new in a job, and I'm mindful of the new MPs who are all starting, sharing information and kind of asking, well, who knows who works with who, all of that's really useful. But, the context in which you could do it, if it's deemed as gossip, that's going to harm your own reputation.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of gossip is almost part of our DNA as human beings, I think. But I think there's a really good rule in life, and certainly in the office, and that is that basically don't say nasty things about other people.
Yeah.
If you don't say nasty things, that doesn't mean that don't call out bad behaviour, don't stand up for people who are being treated badly.